Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, Oklahoma and Texas Tech, plus Alabama and Arkansas in college basketball, and then playoff action with the Cowboys taking on the Seahawks and the Patriots hosting the Jets. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists.
Welcome back to Proline, and welcome to 2007. I hope you had a great Christmas, a great New Year's, and we're looking to pick a lot of winners this year, and I hope you stay tuned with us because we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. You guys see that Boise State-Oklahoma game? Was that one of the most entertaining games you've ever seen?
What a fourth quarter.
Unbelievable.
Kind of explained the way the whole bowl season went. It seems like in almost every game there's been one team that didn't care to be there. Not to take anything away from Boise, but Oklahoma, they were as flat and as sloppy as could be for about 2.5 quarters.
Peterson, that's his name, the head coach. One big pair. You talk muy grande culones.
Oh, yeah, those are the only moves.
I'll tell you what. It's okay. We're on the internet
the
here.
Statue of Liberty.
I'll tell you what. I had Oklahoma in the game. I just felt that big difference in the offensive line opposed to Boise's defensive line, 41 pounds a man. I thought they'd get worn down in the second half. They might have towards the end of the game, and that might have had some of the thinking, Peterson's thinking when he decided to go for the two. But still, Jim, you said before we started this, an exciting game. This might have been one of the, sure there was mistakes the first 3 quarters. Oklahoma didn't play well. But for sheer excitement, might have been one of the greatest bowl games ever.
Seriously. I know I was jumping up and down. I loved it.
Yeah, I was happy because I had Boise, first of all, for the highest possible play on my service. It was a top-level play. I loved Boise in the game. And, it was Oklahoma a little bit flat. Maybe they were. But I know one thing, Boise wasn't. And that's what you want in these bowl games. If you can find a team where you do have a motivational edge, you got a real good chance to pick up the money.
Motivation.
Well, we've made a lot of money off of that, just taking teams that we felt that would come to play.
Yep.
And but the problem is, see, this is why it screams for a bowl system again. A playoff system again, because every team's going to come to play if they're included in the bowl system, and you're not going to. I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't have a big play in that game, but I'm watching the contest, and I'm watching slop for 2.5 quarters by one of the teams, that Oklahoma game. And now that's going to be the hat that they hang the hanger that they hang their hat on as far as the college officials are concerned and say, see what great bowl games we get? Tell you what, that was a bad game for 2.5 quarters.
Well, it was on one
sloppy.
side, but whose problem is that? That's Oklahoma's problem.
Oh, I know, but that's not the point. The point is they're going to hang their hat on that and say, see, everybody was happy with the bowl system.
Well, part of the problem
that's not true because even in the booth, Tom Brenneman, who, by the way, the broadcasting crew in that game was really great.
Outstanding.
Charles Davis did a good job, and Barry Alvarez is very good considering he's not very experienced at broadcasting games. I enjoyed the broadcast. But Tom Brenneman, with a minute to go in regulation, the game is still up in the air, is talking about wouldn't it be great if the winner of this game was moving on to the next round game. And he's absolutely right. We were talking about this before we came on today. And honestly, we don't know the answer. There has to be some kind of corruption out there, for lack of a better word, as to why there's no kind of a playoff system, because there's no way anybody could possibly tell me that if Boise State were now moving on to a second-round game against, for instance, USC or Penn State or somebody else who won their bowl game, the audience would be enormous. The dollars would be unbelievable. So why aren't these things taking place?
Let's go back to the NCAA last year when
George
Mason. Cinderella team, just like Boise State would be a Cinderella team, but they've deserved to get somewhere. They are 13-0. Look at, everybody in the country was talking about George Mason.
Yeah.
Everybody in the country would be talking about Boise State, especially after that kind of a win. Sure. Now, granted, we know that they don't match up well with the bigger teams. They don't have the athletes. They don't have the speed. But they caught lightning in a bottle, and they've had that kind of a season. It happened years ago with BYU, and we just ignore these clubs. But they really never have a chance to win the national
And that's the thing. And I agree. It's real easy for us to sit here and say, well, if they played Ohio State, they'd get beat by this much or that much. It doesn't matter what we think. Opinions don't decide contests. I was of the opinion that the Pittsburgh Steelers were not the best team in the NFL last year. Most people were of that opinion. But they won the Super Bowl. You prove it on the football field.
There's a movie out that's been playing since, I don't know, the 1960s or 70s called Hoosiers. And if you remember, that's when they didn't have all these different brackets in college basketball, and the little school could play the big school. They can't do that anymore, of course, because they have these different divisions, 1A, AAA, all that stuff. You can't accomplish that anymore. You have to be a larger school in order to play in the Division 1A. But that movie's still playing because
it's a great
they
flick.
love Cinderella stories.
Well, the thing is, Boise, if they have a playoff system, they have a chance.
Yeah.
Bottom line,
They deserve
might not
their
win
opportunity.
it, and they deserve the. I think it's still in Kentucky or North Carolina. They still have the high school. At least they did about 5 years ago. They had all the high schools, no matter what size of the high school, all played in the same state tournament every year. So it was kind of along those lines.
Really?
It's just a couple of years ago. And you can ask Mike Sanford, who is the head coach at UNLV, or Urban Meyer, who's the head coach at Florida now. They were there at Utah, and they'll tell you, hey, we don't know.
Yeah.
We would have liked to have found out. We think we could have beaten anybody in the country that year, including USC, and including LSU.
Well, I'm not going to say,
the irony of the whole thing is,
right.
we're not in the minority here, other than the quote powers to be, that kind of like this background thing we don't understand. Everybody, I think, or a vast majority of the fans, most of the coaches, I think they all would love to see the playoffs, and yet.
Well, that's why Dave said there's got to be something going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
A game between this year, I mean, whoever wins the Ohio State and Florida game against Boise would be such a huge payday for college football.
Sure.
I mean, and for the networks. I mean, it would be. How can they pass that up?
And
we were talking about before the
because big favorites can come out with a lot of pressure on them.
That's right.
Well,
that's
before
part of what
they
happened
do.
in Oklahoma.
But before the show, we were even talking about, Boise might not even get a chance to play in one extra game if
they
there was
wouldn't.
one. It would be USC against the winner of Florida and Ohio State.
Right.
That would still
Because
make them
of
a
the
tons of
because
money.
the ratings.
And that would still make
if
them a
you
tons
use
of
the
money.
BCS
Right.
ratings, Boise still
Right.
wouldn't get there.
Sure.
You never know, and here's the thing, and this is why Boise probably doesn't win another game in this bowl system if they have playoff format. But you never know because big favorites. I mean, we saw this happen in Oklahoma. They may have been flat. They may have also just been a little bit unnerved because everybody told them all week long. When you're told you're supposed to go out there and hammer a team, it can be difficult to do that. And the interesting thing is, if you look at how this game is being examined, they're calling it, this monstrous upset.
Yeah,
Hell, they were
it's
only
ridiculous.
7-point underdogs.
Exactly.
Boise's a good football team.
Huge
Not a
upset.
big upset.
It sounded like a monstrous upset because Oklahoma thought they were playing like the Little Sisters of the Poor, and they acted. Who is this?
You know
team?
what I think it was, Jim?
They were cocky.
They had nothing to win. That's why. That's why they played sloppy, and I think
You
that's
know
why
what?
they
You're going
lost.
to go out and win the game anyway. I mean,
Dave,
what
that's
did
true. Hold on a
USC have to
second.
win against
That's
Michigan?
true.
They
That
sure
is
tried
true.
at the end of the
On
game
the
to win
surface,
when they were down
well,
28.
of course,
They
that's
came
competitive
back.
nature.
Yeah.
On the surface, you got to go out and win anyway, no matter what the situation. But subconsciously, I don't care what you say. Oklahoma was not playing for anything, and at the end of the game there, when they had a chance to win the game, of course their competitive nature started flowing and the juices started flowing. If you've played football, you know that. But there are flat spots on your schedule. And when there's nothing to play for, like this crazy-ass BCS system has installed or instilled into college football, there's nothing to play for all but two teams.
Oh, I understand.
And if you're a top team instead of a bottom feeder, and you're playing in a game that you think you should be in a better game than that, it's tough to focus on the team you're playing on. I don't care who you're playing. Look at Texas. Had a huge play on Iowa because I figured Texas, they didn't care to be in that game against the Iowa
that's
Hawkeyes.
True. But shouldn't? And I guess it's a criticism of Bob Stoops. Then they did get into a BCS bowl. I mean, they got into about as good a bowl game as they could get into.
Yeah.
If you can't get ready for a game like that, then what the hell's wrong with you?
Well, they're
that's
human.
supposed to be. I don't know. I got to look at
Somebody
it.
could argue that West Virginia wasn't in the game either.
Well, but they were hurt. They were really
They
banged
were hurt.
up.
Yeah.
I mean, they did come out really flat.
Yeah.
That's
almost every
I
bowl
agree,
game.
but I think that was as much injury as anything else.
Yeah.
Right from the very first bowl game, and we agree on a lot of the points in that there should be a playoff system. Right from the very first bowl game, right up until the games that have been played so far. Obviously, we got the Ohio State-Florida game coming up, Saturday night game. But the bottom line is there has been one team that didn't care to be there and one team that wanted to play in almost every single bowl game. Do you think BYU, I had BYU, do you think the 30 points better than Oregon?
No.
I mean, that was a team that the
Oregon,
Ducks...
Oregon shut their mouths off, first of all. And they also,
that was ridiculous, by the way.
I tell you what, there have been a couple of games where both teams wanted to be there, and they've been great games. Houston, South Carolina, I have had a great bowl season, but one game I did lose was Houston plus the points against South Carolina. But what a game.
Dave, that's
and
30,
both teams wanted that one.
bowl games, though, and you can only pick out one or two.
Oh,
that's the
that's
situation.
well, that's the problem with the system.
For betting and for what
Well,
we do,
basically, the
it's been
bowl
awesome.
games are basically like a reward for having a 6-6 season or better.
Exactly.
I mean, which is crazy. We don't need
Not for
30
Glenn Mason.
Well, what did he blow, a 31-point lead?
Yeah, goodbye.
I mean, you deserve to lose. I mean, that's the same thing that happened with in the pros with the Cardinals and Dennis Green.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the pros, and we heard Herm Edwards say this in his news conference. There were 4 teams playing at home that all had to win in order to get in the playoffs. And the only team that managed to win was Kansas City. What happened to these other clubs? Did they just choke? Look at Denver, a huge favorite over San Francisco, and they just come up and lay a big old rotten egg.
When you're in a must-win situation, and it's the final week of the season, I think Dave said it last time we were doing a show, and he said, if you're in a must-win situation, final week of the season, it means you're not that good. Yeah. And so that means you can get there, exactly, right? And that means you can get beat by anybody.
And the difference, I wonder what the odds would have been if you'd have looked at the final regular season game, realized what Kansas City had to do, not only win a contest, have 4 other teams. I mean, I like to have gotten whatever the odds would have been for that.
A real long shot. It's great that, because of what happened with Lamar Hunt, it's great that they're there.
Right.
And we'll be talking about some NFL games in a couple of minutes and some college basketball games as well. So we'll be right back.
In a moment, the panel breaks down the Big 12 battle between Oklahoma and Texas Tech. But first, Glenn McGrew, who had another great weekend in basketball, including a Vegas team winner with Cal over Arizona State and a 25-star winner with Phoenix over Detroit, has his first college basketball Game of the Year release.
We're going to talk some college basketball and pro football in just a second. First, congratulations to everybody that called early this week and won my bowl game of the year in the Orange Bowl. What a thrilling contest. Louisville getting the best of Wake Forest. And I don't want to sound redundant, but another winning hoops weekend. And I'm going to ride that momentum with another big basketball offer on Saturday. Give me a call. You're going to get my first conference game of the year play in college hoops, plus a huge bonus, my pro basketball game of the month. Both plays, just $20, available Saturday at 1-900-226-0410. That's 1-900-226-0410. Now, we're going to talk some college basketball. First, though, Jim, you wanted to mention something else.
Well, yeah, there's a website out there that everybody's talking about. I have not personally played fantasy sports in the past, but I'm going to get interested in this one. Rotoplay.com. They feature shorter-term fantasy games rather than the long-term events where people can. Well, Dave, you know a little bit more about fantasy sports. If you get eliminated early, you drop out of the game.
One of the problems with season-long leagues, and fortunately it doesn't happen to me because I'm always in the hunt. I do like fantasy sports. I think it's a lot of fun. But you do have a lot of leagues, and for those of you who've played in leagues, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You have a lot of situations where guys fall behind early and they just kind of lose interest, and it can kind of bring down the whole league. This is a new concept where the leagues are a lot more short-term, so you get immediate gratification, so to speak, if you do your job right.
That's right, Dave. If you do your job right in these long-term fantasy leagues, you're okay, but if you don't, you're out early. This concept features like a 2-week contest for just the NBA, and then they'll have golf coming up, and then when the college tournaments start, they'll have something short-term there too. Check this out, rotoplay.com. It's exciting, it's new, it's going to be the forefront of what fantasy leagues are going to be about.
I was going to say that sounds tremendous. I'm not into fantasy leagues either. Of course, Dave's, like you said, he's had a lot of success here, but guys being guys, and of course I'm a guy, this idea of instant gratification, that's got to be the way to go, don't you think?
I agree. When we make a play in the morning, at night we know if we won or not.
Right.
We don't want to wait the whole season,
that's
right?
Great, isn't it?
But yeah,
Glenn's all about instant gratification.
Instant gratification, constantly. It's his middle name. Talking about instant gratification, I think Oklahoma and Texas Tech are going to probably want a little gratification out of their upcoming game. Texas Tech, Bobby Knight, he did it again. He made headlines. He's now the winningest coach in college basketball history. And now he's going to come off the floor. In that game, they win against New Mexico, up 20 points, and they squeeze out of it. They actually lose the lead, come back and win by 2. I mean, I don't know. How good is this Texas Tech?
They're not that good. They're going to struggle in Big 12 competition this year. They're just not that good a basketball team, and I think we consider themselves very fortunate to be above 500 in Big 12 play. I don't think they will be. And Oklahoma is definitely in we like to call it the transitional mode. It's another way of saying they kind of suck. But it really is, in their case, it actually is a transitional mode because they've been a very good program.
Sure.
But this is not one of their better teams. They can't put the ball in the basket. I think they're a little better team than Texas Tech, but it's a really close call. Not a game I'm going to get involved with. I lean Oklahoma.
Huge graduation losses for this Oklahoma team. Boy, they
That's the
lost
coach.
a lot of talent. Well, and then what happened, besides losing all these players to graduation, a lot of signings. They had some pretty good-looking recruits coming in.
Yeah.
They all said no thank you when Sampson decided to go to Indiana, take that job. Capel really doesn't have a lot of experience here. I agree with you. Tech isn't a very good basketball team, but, boy, I think they're the side with a low number here in
Well,
this game.
you got, not only, as you mentioned, Sampson being gone, and Glenn hit a point that I was going to make, is that they had a heck of a recruiting class, early recruiting class that Sampson was putting together, and they all went somewhere else. But they lost Gray, Everett, Bookout. I was watching the game the other day, and at Lloyd Noble Arena, they moved the rims and put them on the other side of the glass. Well, maybe not, but it's about that bad.
I like Capel, though. I think he's
Well, I
going
do
to do
like
a really
Capel.
good
I think
job
he'll
with
be
this
fine.
team, but he
look
just
at their,
doesn't have the talent.
I mean, I don't know if you can call Texas Tech a step-up game. The only reason it kind of qualifies as maybe a step-up game is because it is a conference game and you're going on the road against okay competition. I agree with you, though. Texas Tech,
one guy.
they got worked by New Mexico. They got worked by UNLV on the glass. Now, UNLV is a good playing team and they're a good defensive squad, but they shouldn't be working Texas Tech on the glass at Texas Tech. And I think what's going to happen here, look at the step-up games for Oklahoma. Memphis, Purdue, Villanova, Alabama, lost all four by a combined 12 points per game. But I think here I'm going to have to lean with the underdog, the road team, and that's the Oklahoma Sooners, because Bobby Knight's just telling you like it is. He's not saying the right reason, but he's saying we can't get the premier athlete, the premier basketball player to come to Lubbock. He's blaming it on where they play. I'm telling you what, nobody good wants to play for Bobby Knight anymore. I think it was Gary Thorne, but don't quote me on that name, but I believe it was him in a broadcast in between the UNLV and New Mexico games for Texas Tech when they still had to win one more to get the record. And he goes, you know, I've known Bobby Knight for a real long time. I'm not so sure that he deserves to be getting the adulation that he's getting if he breaks this record. He goes, to me, it's kind of like Barry Bonds going after the home run mark. It's a great feat, but I'm not so sure he should be getting all this credit for it right now.
He doesn't have great athletes at Texas Tech, and it doesn't matter what the reasons are, the location or the fact that it's Bobby Knight. He's got one. Jarius Jackson's a real nice player.
Sure.
That's pretty much it on the squad. The rest of it's a bunch of lunch pail guys who, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is not a team that is NCAA tournament worthy. I mean, they're absolutely NIT material, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think listening to everybody kind of disappointed in this game. I think the quick fix was maybe talk these guys into forgetting the game and having the two football teams play. Then Tech and Oklahoma, we'd have a pretty good contest.
Interesting that you say that nobody good wants to play for Bobby Knight, but yet, and he says he can't get athletes in Lubbock, but he chose to go to to Lubbock. So, I mean, didn't he understand that part?
Exactly.
If that's the truth, why didn't he know that?
Are you going to tell me that if Mike Krzyzewski goes to Lubbock, Texas, he's not going to be able to get quality players, or if Roy Williams goes to Lubbock, Texas, he can't get quality players? They'll get him because of who they are.
So expand on this a little bit. Basically, what you're saying is because of his personality and what he's done in his career with players, and some people say he's abusive, verbally, physically, and that's why he's not getting.
I believe so. You could do it 20 years ago and get away with it. I don't believe his style anymore. And it's been that way since he was in Indiana the last couple of years.
No question.
You just
20
can't
years
get the good
society
players.
has changed.
Sure.
You just don't do those kind of things. We got another big game coming up: Alabama and Arkansas. We'll be right back.
Coming up next, SEC Hoops with Alabama and Arkansas. But first, let's hear from Smokin' Dave Koken, who finished up the pro football regular season with a perfect 8-0 Sunday and nailed his bowl game of the year with Florida State.
We're going to talk about a good basketball game in the SEC in a moment. But first, I get to brag for a little bit here. And, well, and I get to spill
napkin, please.
On my chair as well. See, this is not just an empty cup. There is coffee in here, and I just spilled it all.
That calls for a dope.
Very good, Dave.
You know, that's actually about the first mistake I've made in the last week and a half. Wow. I mean, it has been a run that has been absolutely
Your choice
amazing.
to get kidney stones was not a good choice.
That wasn't my choice. No. That was, by the way,
you flushed out the
for those who've never enjoyed that experience, it was awful. Anyway, here's the good stuff. On Sunday, I had one of the best days I've ever had in pro football. I went 8-0 on my plays on Sunday in pro football. The bowl games, I had my bowl game of the year, Florida State plus the points against UCLA. Sure didn't need the points, as Florida State was an outright winner in that game. And the bowls have been tremendous for me. New Year's Day, I win my 4 top plays on Boise, Penn State, Georgia Tech, and Wisconsin. NBA, 12-4-1 on my last 17 plays. College hoops have been a little bit back and forth, but more good than bad. The NHL's been outstanding. This is a really great run right now. I'm going to give away a week of my under-the-hat releases. These are strong plays, and all you need to do to get them is call 1-800-547-4224. That's a whole week of under-the-hat plays, Plus, I'm going to include my best pro football playoff game. Plus, I'm going to include my college basketball game of the month. Outstanding package. Make sure and take advantage. 1-800-547-4224. Alabama and Arkansas.
Well, I want to know is when are you going to get hot?
I want to just keep it going, man.
That's why
This is good stuff right now.
He was throwing coffee on himself because he wants to remain hot.
on that 8-0 especially.
That was fun.
That was amazing. And week 17 in the NFL is not an easy week to handicap. You got half the teams, you got to really.
Wait. Is there an easy week to handicap in the NFL?
Yeah, I know it, huh? No, this is the spot. This is the spot where I'm supposed to sit here and go, well, it is for me. But no, I just, everything happened to fall right on this day, and that's just the way it is sometimes, so hopefully we can keep it going. But,
absolutely.
Hey, Arkansas and Alabama, this Alabama team, I think that's a really big game for this team. From this standpoint, they have to prove they can win on the road. They've got a chance to go a long way in the tournament this year. I mean, they're really an extremely athletic team, but the unfortunate hallmark of this squad the last few years has been an inability to win important games on the road. I think this is a proving ground type of game for them even right now.
It's a tough spot to go to win. I mean, it's the numbers real close on the game. Alabama's going to try to pound the ball down low. Can Arkansas defend that?
Well, that's the thing. But, Dave hit it on the head. He must have been thinking like I was last night when I was jotting down a few notes. The athleticism that Alabama brings to this game, I think, is what's going to put them over the top in this contest. Now, taking SEC road teams is putting your life in your betting hands, so to speak, over the years for the most part. But in this particular game, I think they're going to win the game. If you have the athletes to do it, you could win at Arkansas. Look at the couple of teams that they've lost to this year in their step-up games. Now, it was on the road, but they get blasted by Mizzou by 22 points. That Texas Tech team we just talked about being non-athletic, maybe not quite as athletic as they should be, they got beat by them by 15 points by the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
What
now, it's a
surprises
different situation, though, Dave. When you go into the conference play, you get a little bit more fired up than you do for Texas Tech if you're an SEC team. But the bottom line is, I just don't think they have the horses to keep up with Bama here.
I was so high on this coach when he came over to the Mid-American Conference.
Right.
And Arkansas hasn't really gotten to the point where I thought they would be under his expertise. I thought they would have been back to the point where they were contending for an SEC championship.
Do you think it's a Peter Principle thing with him? I'm wondering because he's been there now enough time to get his system going. Exactly. Yeah.
This you mentioned you want to see Alabama win some road games. They've done pretty good so far this year. They've already won at Iowa, at North Carolina State, a team actually it's very good. They're just shorthanded. They're playing like 5 guys per night, and that's about it. And then a big win at Xavier. So this are not at least on the road. It was a neutral site, but to win those 3 games shows you that I think the Alabama's taken that next step. They have a front line that's really scary. The poor kid Davidson, who's had a lot of tragedy in his life the last couple of weeks. Geese stepped up. He's 6'5", but he plays bigger than that. And then what's the other big guy? Oh, and Hendricks. This is 3 big men that's going to give Alabama trouble, Arkansas trouble. And Bama had some little bumps in the road this year so far. But if you'll note, most of those times it was when their point guard, Ron Steele. I mean, this guy is one of the best in the country. He's had ankle injuries, a back injury, a couple of things, but he seems to be pretty healthy right now. I think he has his way with this. Arkansas
I also think, and you mentioned Davidson, and you wouldn't wish these circumstances on anybody. I mean, he's just had an unbelievable amount of personal tragedy in the last year. But I think from and I know this is going to sound callous, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but it's just a fact of life. From a basketball standpoint, I think it's probably one of those things that's really bonded this team. Sure. Because this kid, his brother got shot in the head and is I believe, still in the hospital. His girlfriend, this is after they had visited the brother in the hospital. They're driving home. They get in an accident, and his girlfriend gets killed. He walks away without a scratch. His girlfriend dies. She ended up dying in the same hospital that his brother's in. That's incredible. Yeah. And for him, basketball is an escape right now.
That's what I was just going to say.
And I think that the team is responding in kind. I mean, it's not the way you want a situation to unfold, but I think we're seeing something special in this Alabama team develop because of these horribly adverse circumstances.
Not very happy stuff,
No.
but we all pray for that family to get over this. That's for sure. We'll be right back. We got some NFL to talk about.
Coming up, Saturday's NFC wildcard game between Dallas and Seattle. But first, we'll hear from Scott Spreitzer, who is coming off his Shocker of the Year, Pro Football Game of the Year, and 2 College Basketball Game of the Year winners.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking pro football playoffs in just a moment. But I tell you what, folks, we got it going on at Smash Mouth Sports. I mean, first of all, in December, we had a 3-week Saturday run in the month of December in college basketball where we went 20-9 against the spread on Saturdays. That included a perfect 2-0 mark with non-conference games of the year. And by the way, we didn't just squeak by with those games. We won 72-50 with Ohio State over Cincy. We won 86-46 with the Memphis Tigers. Today, I've got my first conference game of the year in college basketball going. That's on Saturday slate. Also, my wild card game of the year in pro football, part of a free wild card weekend. And you know what happened with my pro football regular season game of the year? We won 40-7 with New England over Houston. Hey, you do not want to miss out when I release big plays at Smash Mouth Sports. Get the entire weekend, including the college conference game of the year and my wild card game of the year right now, free at 1-800-521-1872, 800-521-1872. And now let's talk about some pro football. We've got, the Cowboys at Seattle that we're going to talk about
I'm
first.
impressed by the fact that you didn't spill anything during
You notice I didn't come anywhere near it.
He's more disciplined than you
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
He's more under control.
He's
you
more
know
under control than these two football teams we're going to talk
these
about,
two
too.
football. I mean, talk
Jeez.
about teams just stumbling into the playoffs. I mean, neither one of these clubs are looking good at all. I mean, Romo started out great. Now he's making a ton of mistakes. Of course, you have the TO factor down there, but he is a warrior, and he might come to play hard. I mean, we do remember what he did in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The guy has talent, and he is a warrior. He'll play hurt, and he'll play hard. Seattle, of course, you could have rainy conditions up there. You usually have rainy conditions up there. But they're not the team they were a year ago.
Yeah.
And both teams are like 1-3
Oh,
straight up the last 4 games.
Scuffle. Well, Seattle's never put it together this year. They've had the injury issues with Sean Alexander, and Hasselbeck has really not played well, and I don't know that he ever really got healthy. And the big factor on Dallas, I think T.O. gets all the publicity because it's T.O. I think the biggest factor in this team is the Greg Ellis factor. That team has not been the same defensively since Greg Ellis got hurt. And, they're 12th overall. If you look at the yearly stats in the NFL for the whole season, the 12th in overall defense. They're nowhere near the 12th defensive team since Ellis got hurt.
If you segment the season, look at the last part of the season, last
Horrible.
4 games, 5 games. Horrible. Both defenses.
I don't know, though. I mean, how's Seattle going to score against this team? Because
still better than Seattle.
Dallas held Detroit to 39 points. How does Seattle score in this game? I'll tell you what. Here's what you got to do as far as Terrell Owens, because here it is again, a little struggling streak here for the Dallas Cowboys, and Owens, who gets the ball thrown to him left and right all day long, complaining that he doesn't get the ball thrown to him enough. And when they do throw it to him, it's almost like Jeremy Stevens. You got a 50-50 chance on whether he's going to hang on to the football or not. But what you got to do is, I think you got to go to him right away in this game. I want Terrell Owens involved right off the bat because I think they can get behind this defense, Owens and the other wideout, Glenn, on the other side of the field. They can get behind a pretty bad Seattle secondary. At the same time, I think that Seattle's going to be able to throw downfield against this horrible Dallas defense we've just been talking about. I think it's a lot of points in this game. The reason I mentioned about getting Terrell Owens involved early, because if they fall behind with him involved, he can't sit over there and whine and be a detriment to this team on the sideline because he is part of this team. And if they do get him involved, I think there's a better chance that they score early and grab an early lead.
I think you're right about Dallas being able to go downfield. I know Romo's had a second half that hasn't been quite so spectacular, but it doesn't matter. That's not their problem right now. It's their defense, and that's the same with Seattle. They lost their second starting quarterback last week. Herndon, I think, a broken ankle or something.
Yeah.
Trufant's out, very doubtful to play this weekend. They're probably going to start their 4th and 5th best cornerbacks in this contest. As far as Dallas is concerned, you mentioned the overall 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever they are. They're 23rd, though, against the pass. And it's been even higher over the past 4 or 5 games.
pass rush.
Oh, terrible. And the secondary has had all sorts of problems. This is a team that's given up 33 points per game over the last 4 contests. I mean, when Michael Vick throws for 4 touchdowns, your favorite quarterback, Scott.
Yeah, he's been good.
John Kitna for 3 touchdowns against the secondary. I think Hasselbeck, who is a little healthier now and has actually played pretty decent the last couple of games, I think this one is a scoring fest. Even if there's a little bit of rain up there, I guess, I'm from Seattle, it does rain once in a while, you're right. Even if it does rain, that might even help these offenses. So
It definitely looks like a high-scoring affair. I mean, neither team could be trusted as far as the quality of the clubs, but we can trust their defenses are bad, and both teams can score.
Yeah,
it does look like
Seattle, of course, they have to hold on to the football. I mean, as many drops as Owens has for Dallas, everybody in Seattle's got the disease this year. Even Deion Branch. When did his hands go so bad?
Yeah, he never played like that with New England.
No.
Never.
Anybody that plays in Seattle has to drop the ball.
That must be it.
You know what? But this is what's amazing. As bad as Jeremy Stevens has been, per pass attempt, Terrell Owens has more drops than Jeremy Stevens.
Really?
I mean, that's scary.
Wow.
And that's as bad as Jeremy Stevens has been since last year in the playoffs.
Talking about the NFL, we've had some coaches hit the road, Jack.
Nick Saban, of course.
Nick Saban.
Saban's getting ripped by everybody. He's a mercenary. They're giving him $30 million. How do you say no to that? And job security, because he's 1 year away from being fired in Miami. If he sticks around Miami, the Dolphins don't make the playoffs next year. He's going to get fired.
Maybe half a year.
It's so easy for people to sit here, and I'm in the media, so I'm talking about some of my colleagues here. It's so easy to sit here and say, "Oh, this guy, he's a sellout," blah 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 blah. You're offering him $30 million and really as much job security as you could ever want. And a lot easier job.
You can't turn that down.
I mean, he'd be out of his mind.
I love the chance with a chance to make more than you, Dave. How can a guy turn this down? As you said, he might be out of a job in a year. Seriously, though, you'd have to think he was an idiot not to take the job. Forget about that.
Well, what they're saying is,
and like Dave says, there's no security in the NFL if you don't win.
No.
And Nick Saban has a job for at least 4 years, no matter how bad he does.
Jim Mora, he's gone to Atlanta. Yep. I mean, everybody thought he had a lot of promise.
By the way,
Atlanta, but
did you
made some mistakes.
Did you hear what Vic said? No wonder Jim Mora. You know what, Jim? You're better off not having this
Deal with him.
I'm starting to think that Mora's dad was right.
He's a coach killer.
Vic says, I'm not making this up. This is right after Sunday. He does an interview. He says, I thought I had a really good season. And he basically threw the rest of the team under the bus.
You got to give me a call.
I can't wear this is I don't wear a Superman thing on my chest or whatever. What good season is he talking about? He had about 3 good games back to back where he looked great, and then he reverted back to the scattershot quarterback who's inaccurate.
You know what, Dave? That's all you need to know about Michael Vick, because even if he did have a really good season, because they had a disappointing season with their finish, where they ended up not getting to the playoffs, he ought to be a team player and keep his mouth shut. Instead, we have a lot of work to do.
No, it doesn't look like he's the guy you want on your team.
No way.
That's absolutely.
And Mora, he shot his mouth off a few weeks ago in a Seattle interview, I think it was.
He was joking.
Well, yeah, then the next day he says he's joking, saying he wants to be the coach of the Washington Huskies, which Ty Willingham must be thinking, what? I mean, watch out, Ty Willingham, because Jim Mora wants your job and he's making it known. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Do you see Mora landing anywhere else? I know he gets the paycheck anyway.
I don't know.
He doesn't need the money.
No,
he's a heck of an assistant at San Francisco.
I
think he could be a good coordinator
for a year.
Yeah.
And then something else will open up.
I think he'd be a really good coordinator. Back to doing what he's good at.
I think any NFL coach though can, or the previous coach in the NFL, he can always get a college job though.
Sure,
without a doubt.
I think Mora still has the capabilities. I mean, I'm not selling him out as a bad coach because things didn't work in Atlanta, because I think he had some real issues with the personnel on this team, most notably the quarterback, who thinks he's the second coming of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and he's not even in the same zip code, okay? And I think that when your team leader is a me-first type of guy like that, I think you're going to run into problems. So I don't think we know how good or not good a coach Mora is in the NFL. I mean, his dad was no stiff.
Right.
He didn't win the big games, but he was pretty good at building respectable teams.
And what he did at New Orleans was miracle work.
I thought Mora's done outstanding work as an assistant, and I don't see why he can't be a good head coach in the league, and I think he'll get a second chance someplace.
What about Dennis Green? Is it time for him to go back to college? I mean, he gets
Go
a
to
lot
Minnesota.
of, what's that?
Minnesota's got an opening.
No, that's not a bad,
I'm telling you, really. I mean,
seriously.
I'm serious. I think that
he'd be a
Minnesota
great college coach.
should hire Dennis Green. He's available. I think that, he's got ties to the state, obviously. He lived there for a long time. He was with the Vikings. He's a good college coach. He's had excellent success.
And not only that, Dave, but the pro players like him.
Yeah.
And that means that when he goes on a recruiting visit, he's got a little bit extra coming with him when he walks in that front door than a lot of the guys out there who have never had NFL experience. Plus, like I said, they like him. The players, I remember watching an interview, Larry Fitzgerald, about 2 weeks ago, saying, we really want him on the sideline next year. We are playing up to our, the best we can do right now, because we want Dennis Green back on the sideline. And I don't think it was lip service. I think they really like Dennis Green, the players.
Who fills these jobs? Atlanta, Miami,
Well, Atlanta,
Arizona?
as we're doing this, we don't know what the situation in Pittsburgh is. If Cowher leaves, I think Wisenhunt takes that job. Otherwise, I think Wisenhunt may very well end up in Atlanta. I know that the owner of the team says he wants a proven winner, so maybe that means he's not going to go for a guy who hasn't been a head coach already, but I don't know, Wisenhunt's done an awfully good job as an assistant in Pittsburgh. He comes from a winning organization. Isn't that the type of guy you'd like to try and ride with? I mean, he could be a big winner. I'm not sure that Russ Grimm, he's not being mentioned quite as frequently as head coach material, but he's also out of
what
that Steeler
proven winners
organization.
are out there right now that don't have jobs right now? That's what I want to know. I mean,
There aren't that many.
There aren't.
No.
Don Shula? He's not going to come back. Not even for $40 million.
There really aren't that many winning coaches that don't have jobs. You're right.
Pete Carroll, his name has been bantered around again for the Arizona job.
Not a there's chance in the
Well,
world.
no,
that
I'm
guy
not.
leave-
I totally agree with you, but I'm just
No,
saying
no,
there's
but
his name out there
let's
again.
look-
But
they throw
they put
$40
that
million
money out there.
Yeah.
They put
Let's
that
look.
money out
Let's
there.
look at the league itself, though. I mean, you look at the kind of teams that we have in the playoffs, and these are supposed to be the best teams in football. And we just talked about the Seattle, Dallas clubs, and they've been sorry. And in this past week, we had clubs that could have gotten in with a win, and none of them were all that good either. So it's hard for a coach to come in and build a winning program when you're dealing with talentless teams. I mean, clubs that just aren't built to win.
You know what might get Pete Carroll to go to Arizona and leave USC finally? He's got to play in Lincoln next year.
Yeah.
That would scare anybody.
that might, yeah.
You know what?
These
You're
Nebraska
gone.
kids talk
You're
this
right.
way all the
Although,
time.
you know what? They should go interview Bill Callahan. What do you think? I think Arizona will have to go to Callahan.
I
After
would
watching
think
that
that,
coaching job in the bowl game, I mean,
Don't you think that's the main reason Carroll would stay? Because he wants to make that
he wants
big
to stay in
victory?
Lincoln.
Yeah.
He knows he's got a victory if he goes there. I mean, he knows that. That's easy.
I think that Carroll actually is a candidate for the Arizona job. I mean, it's obviously not a real good job because of the history of the franchise. What is it, 6 decades they've got one playoff win? That's just
They
unbelievable.
mentioned Norm Chow as far going down.
This guy keeps
Norm
getting
Chow
passed
deserves a
over.
chance.
Yeah, he
and
does,
he
definitely.
did coach Leinart.
Yeah, and he's
So-
been, he's a guy who probably should have had a head coaching job long.
Should have had the
before
Stanford
now.
job.
Yeah,
years ago.
I think he's a guy that hasn't necessarily given the impression to the people that are considering him that he really
No,
wants
I've
to go
heard.
to the pros.
This is what I've heard, and it's secondhand information, obviously, because I was never in the room when it took place. But I've heard he doesn't interview well, and that GMs and athletic directors put a tremendous amount of stock in the interview process when they're hiring, like any employer does. But I think in his case, I don't care if he's the worst interview of all time. You got to look at the results.
I wonder if this is the same group of people who really follow that test they give quarterbacks before the season.
You
that
wonder that-
said
Probably
Vince
the
Young
same
is no
people.
good.
Same people,
But
yeah.
you know, that's the same thing with Bo Pelini. I mean, here's a good college defensive coordinator who keeps getting interviews, first interviews, never gets called back for a second one for a head coaching spot. So the interview has a lot to do with it. You mentioned you don't know if Norm Chow has ever really expressed that he wants to be a head football coach at the pro level. He was almost manic when he didn't get that Stanford job a couple of years ago, and very depressed, wanted that badly. So there's something going on there. Maybe he doesn't interview well that didn't get him the job, because I don't know anybody who wanted the Stanford Cardinal job more than he did.
Well, I know one thing. If I've got a young quarterback that I'd like to see develop into a star, there's
my
nobody
man.
I want around him more than Norman Chow.
Yeah,
He's a
you're
great
right.
coach.
Sure.
I'm sure Leinart would like to have him back.
Oh, I'm sure too.
Absolutely. We have another game, Jets at Patriots. It's going to be a big game up in Foxborough. We'll be right back to talk about that one.
In a moment, the Jets and Patriots face off this Sunday, but first, world champion handicapper Jim Feist, who nailed 75% of his top plays last Sunday, has a huge weekend offer available completely free of charge.
2006 was an awesome year for me handicapping sports. We're up over 350 units in pro and college football. In 2007, we're going to start the year off monster. We got the college and pro basketball. We've got the playoffs. We've got everything going on. 2007 is going to even be better than 2006. And this is how I want to start the year off for you. Make sure you make this call right now. 1-877-JIM Feist. That's 1-877-546-3347. And here's what you're going to get. My college parlay of the month, of course, in basketball. The wild card game of the year goes this week. Monday's BCS championship game between Florida and Ohio State. And hopefully the winner will go on to play Boise. I'm just kidding. But those 4 big games, you call right now. I mean, right now, 1-877-JIM Feist. That's 1-877-546-3347. 4 big winners on the house. Make the call and make it now. Now we're going to talk about the Jets and Patriots, the battle of the coaches that once worked with each other, and they don't like each other anymore. That's for darn sure. This is a rematch of 2 victories that were by the road teams during the regular season. So what are we going to do here?
You know, to me, this game, it's a little bit like I think of the Jets as the Wake Forest of pro football. And what I mean, that's no disrespect to the Demon Deacons, but they win ugly, and so do the Jets. I mean, this is a team that's won 9 games this year. I think they finished 4-1 down the stretch. I mean, but they finished 24th in the league in offense, 19th in defense. They have no real stars. It's like, how do they keep winning these games? The defense has gotten better. 4 of the last 5 games, I think, this year, that defense held the other team to 12 or less points. And Pennington, he doesn't make any sense to me. This is a guy that whenever they have to have a big play, he makes it. And yet, Dave, we talked about it earlier, it's someone you know can't throw downfield. How come the defenses can't stop this team?
I think that part of it is that if you game plan to what your capabilities actually are than rather than what you hope they are, you get a better chance of capitalizing on your strengths and camouflaging your weaknesses. And I think that's what Mangini and this staff have done. And they know they've got a really good kicker. I mean, Nugent missed some kicks in the very first game of the year. I think he's missed 1 the entire rest of the season. They play field position and field goals. That's what they play. I mean, they don't want to get in shootouts.
Could Mangini be the coach of the year? I mean, there's a certain
absolutely.
He ought to be.
He should be the coach of the year. I'm so. But the thing is, now you got the other team. They're pretty good at this playoff stuff. And also, I wonder if the Jets may take more shots down the field in this game because Rodney Harrison's not going to be there. There's a lot of different things that go into this game on both the side and the total. I mean, they're not making it easy for us. I'm going to have a couple of strong plays in pro football this weekend. This isn't going to be one of them. This is a really tough game for me. I think the Patriots are going to find a way to get it done, but that point spread, boy, they put a big number on the game.
He's got to be really careful, Mangini, if he decides to let Pennington throw the ball deep a couple of times because he doesn't have the great arm strength. And if he is under any kind of a rush when he's trying to wait for things to open up downfield, he could throw that pick or two that really turns this game against him and around. And, I'm one of those guys that when I'm talking about a team like the Jets who really don't have a lot of talent, but they've done what they do to get where they're at, you stick with the chick that brought you to the dance. You don't start changing your dance partners midstream, and all of a sudden, when you do, you usually lose those games pretty handily. But it's kind of funny he mentioned comparing the Jets to Wake Forest because when I was thinking about this game over the last couple of days, I started saying, wow, and I'm going to call you and raise you one because I thought, boy, this Jets team reminds me of the Maryland Terrapins. I mean, talk about smoke and mirrors.
No kidding.
But yet the Maryland Terrapins go into their bowl game and they whip Purdue. Now, there's a little bit difference between Joe Tiller and Bill Belichick.
You think?
But, they've got a chance, like we talked about Boise. Jets are in the game. They've got a chance to win as long as they're in the game.
Question, the Patriots have upped their game at the end of the year. I mean, they won a couple games the last couple of weeks. They didn't even need to win or didn't even need to play.
Well, they've gotten healthy, too, especially on the defensive
Healthier,
side.
Healthy, but for Harrison.
Yeah.
That's a big injury. The Jets also do some things that just don't get noticed as much. Kotri and Coles, these guys,
they're really good.
They take 8-yard passes and turn them into 18-yard passes. I mean, they're really a strong, fundamental team. And I know that Mangini and Belichick don't get along anymore because Mangini, basically tried to raid the Patriots staff and take all of his assistants away and didn't sit well with Belichick. But you can see where a lot of his game planning it's extremely similar. These guys know each other to a T.
I heard a good analogy. I don't know where it was, if it was TV or radio or whatever, and somebody had said that Mangini and his staff kind of remind him of the Wizard of Westwood. They prepare each week to run their game the best they can, and if they get beat, so be it. But they're going to play their game more than they are looking to try to, maybe find the other team's chinks in the armor, so to speak. And I think that's a great analogy when you're talking about Mangini. They focus on what they do best all week long in practice, and they know if they come out and they accomplish what they can do right, then they've got a chance to win every game they're in.
You have two teams in the same city. They play in the same stadium, and they are absolute polar opposites, the Jets and the Giants. One team with not a great deal of talent right now, but just tremendously disciplined and focused on the task at hand. The other team with, I really think, as much talent as any team in the National Football League, and really lucky to be in the playoffs because they have a complete lack of discipline and focus. If you had Mangini coaching the Giants might win the Super Bowl.
By the way, Jim, why does God hate the Detroit Lions so much? I wanted to ask you that.
Why don't they make a change at the top office in that club?
No, it's pictures, dirty pictures.
Dirty picture. Yes.
Millen's got some photos with I don't know, some farm animals are involved, and I don't know. It's just
That's not the first time he's gone for the barnyard animals. That's what's scary.
He talks a lot about barnyard animals. It
Got a lot of them in Rhode Island, right?
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, that team, we talked about them at the beginning of the year with a lot of talent, and they just didn't do it. And then, of course, at the end of the season, they knocked themselves out of the first-round draft choice by beating Dallas. It's another great move.
Smart move.
You know, we talk about Pennington. Let's go back to that game a minute because I wanted to bring up a point about him not having a great arm and not being able to go downfield. But the hottest team in football right now is the Philadelphia Eagles. And they have a quarterback, Garcia, who's up there in years. He's got a great pedigree, up there in years. But he, too, doesn't have a great downfield arm. But he sure can pick you apart in the offense that they run.
the NFL's a precision league.
Yeah.
It's not a bombs away league. That's how you win in pro football is precision.
At least not since St. Louis, the Rams, some of those ball clubs.
But look at those passes by Kurt Warner before he hurt his hand. I mean, those were
He was deadly accurate.
And what he did is what Peyton Manning does. That 1 year that he was in St. Louis before he had the hand surgery, those receivers, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, who are still there, by the way, I mean, those guys never had to stop and wait. They're running full speed. Boom, the ball's there. In stride, gone, see ya.
That's the old Don Coryell down Fouts offense.
Sure, exactly.
You throw the ball before the guy ever makes his move.
Right.
That's
Before we
talk
impossible
about the
to
best
defend.
quarterback of all time.
Absolutely,
Dan
the best
Fouts,
quarterback
best
of all
quarterback
time.
ever played the game.
Nobody ever talks
He's
about
certainly
that
my
guy.
favorite,
Yeah,
before we close this out, little devil's advocate, because we've really just talked about the Jets. And let's just remember one thing, though. Belichick has prepared just a brilliant mind overall as a head coach, but especially he specializes in defense. And if he can find ways to frustrate a guy named Manning in Indianapolis, you have to wonder if maybe he can. I mean, let's face it, they're up against a very mediocre offense in the Jets. It might be difficult for New York to find any types of openings against it. I mean, he's got a week to think about this and come up with some big plans.
There's no question from history and his resume, his pedigree, Belichick has an edge over just about everybody in football when it comes to coaching. We're going to be right back and talk about our best bets.
Coming up next, our Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet, we're going to look at a game we talked about right here in college hoops. I'm going to take Alabama on the road over the Arkansas Razorbacks. And be sure and call Saturday. I've got a terrific offer on my $20 power play line. It's my first conference game of the year in college hoops and a big, big bonus, my pro basketball game of the month. It's all available, 1-900-226-0410.
All right, well, stay with me for a second here. Let me just make sure I don't spill anything, because I'm going to get a little bit excited, and the coffee could go flying. 21-6 on my Proline best bets. This goes back to when we were doing the show on USA Network and now here on the website. So these best bets have been incredible, and I'm going to use Alabama as well. I like what Glenn just said, and I agree with him, and I think they'll go on the road and beat Arkansas. On fire right now, coming off 8-0 in pro football last Sunday. A great run in the Bulls, including my College Bowl Game of the Year in Florida State. Basketball's been pretty good. Even the hockey's been hot. I've got a whole week of under-the-hat plays at no cost whatsoever. Just call the toll-free number that you're looking at right now, 1-800-547-4224. A whole week of under-the-hat plays, plus I'm going to include my college basketball game of the month, plus I'm going to include my best pro football play from this weekend. Make sure and call the number and stay with me on this hot streak.
My best bet, I'm going to go to the Pro Football Wild Card round and take the over between Seattle and the Dallas Cowboys. Bring your catching hands, Terrell and Jeremy, please. Now, I tell you what, we have had no problem sweeping through the month of December and into January now. College basketball, we're already off to a 2-0 start. That was with non-conference games of the year, winning by 22 and by 40 points. Easy winners. I've got my first conference game of the year going this weekend, this Saturday. It's a free weekend of wild card action in pro football led by my wild card game of the year. What have we done with football games of the year? Regular season in college, 66-24 winner. Regular season in the pros, 40-7 winner. Don't miss out on that. It's all available free this weekend right now. 800-521-1872, 1-800-521-1872.
Well, I'm pretty excited about that Alabama play as well. Mike Godfrey's going to pound it down low, and I don't think Arkansas can stop him, so my best bet is Alabama. And your best bet as well as all these other guys' picks and offers, is to make sure you make this phone call. It's absolutely free. 1-877-JIM-FEIST, 1-877-546-3347. Here's what you get. College Parlay of the Month, Wild Card Game of the Year, the BCS Championship game between Florida and Ohio State. 4 big winners, absolutely free. 1-877-JIM-FEIST, 1-877-546-3347. Next week we're going to come back. We're going to have more NFL games, college basketball, pro basketball, and make sure you check out that website, rotoplay.com, for fantasy sports. Pretty exciting site. See you next week.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.